Welcome to another Yarnspirations tutorial. My name is Brittany and I'm the instructor over at Bhooked Crochet, and today I'm going to teach you how to crochet one of my personal designs, the Pop Christmas Stocking. You can download your free pattern directly from yarnspirations.com. You'll also find the supplies list there. Alright, let's see how to make this beautiful stocking. We're going to work these stockings in a toe-up fashion, and to start off the round we need to make a magic ring. Now if the magic ring is your absolute nemesis, you can go ahead and use an alternate method, or you can just follow along here. The magic ring's not too bad once you get the hang of it. So you're going to take the tail end of your yarn and your two fingers and put them together, and just put your yarn in between these fingers and hold on to it there. And then wrap it around your two fingers 2 times, coming towards you. Now just pinch that off down at the bottom, and looking at it from this way, insert your hook underneath both of those loops, catch your back strand, and then just pull it over, or pull it under rather, that first strand. So we need to keep everything in place, but we need to access our working yarn back here. So I'm holding on to it with my pinky and my ring finger, and I just want to raise it up as far as I can so that I can yarn over and pull that through. Now that sort of locks your magic ring into place, but we need to chain 2. So we'll yarn over and pull through again. That's 1 chain, and do that again for 2 chains. Now this is really awkward to hold on to, so what you want to do is just pinch off this section right here, release your fingers, and gather up your yarn, and then we can just hold on to it like this. Now we need to have this tail end wrapped around the front, and we want to work over it as we're working our stitches. Well, for round 1 we need to make 8 half double crochets in this ring, so in the opening. Now we are counting those 2 chains at the beginning as our first stitch. So that will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to make 3 more. Now once you have 8 half double crochets, including your chain 2 at the beginning, then what we need to do is grab our tail and pull it. That's going to fasten up the magic ring. Pull that nice and tight. And then locate your chain 2. And you want to find that second chain right here, which it should be right before your first post. You'll insert your hook into that chain and slip stitch. For round number 2, we're going to chain 2. And this round we want to increase, and we want to do that by making 2 half double crochets into every stitch. So this chain 2 is counting as a stitch, and it's technically going to be the last stitch of our round. So that means I'm going to work my last half double crochet into this space here, and I'm not going to work my first stitches in the same space as the chain 2. Now this is just a personal preference. I feel like the round looks a little bit better this way. You can seal off the gap a little bit more. So you're going to find your first post and work 2 half double crochets there into that stitch, and you're catching both loops of the V. Two half double crochets in the next, and you'll just repeat that until you get to the end of the round, and I'll demonstrate how to finish things off. When you've made it to the end of your round, at this point here you'll have a total of 14 half double crochets. Now that doesn't count this chain 2 initially, just go ahead and double check that you have the correct number of half double crochet posts, and then stitch 15 and 16 we're going to work next. So we see this space right here. That's where we're going to work our 15th half double crochet. And then I mentioned that the chain 2 is going to count as technically our last half double crochet of the round. So that makes number 16. So we'll find the second chain and join with a slip stitch there. For round number 3, we're going to start with a chain 2. And this round we're going to increase again, but we need to change the increments that we're increasing. So in the previous round we increased every single stitch. Well, for round 3 we're going to increase every other stitch. So I'm going to locate my first post right here. That's where I'm going to work 2 half double crochets. And then work 1 half double crochet in the next stitch. 2 in the next. And 1 in the next. So that's our repeat. At the end of round 3, you should end up with 2 half double crochets in the last stitch, and then we're going to join with the slip stitch to our second chain. Now again, we're counting this chain as a stitch, but it's technically the last stitch of our round. So we need to have a total of 24 stitches at the end of this round, including this chain 2. And that's it for round 3. Moving on to round number 4, we're going to chain 2. And this round, we're not going to increase at all. We're doing a little bit of shaping for the toe. We don't want it to get too big, and so we need to make one round where we don't increase. So we'll just make 1 half double crochet into every stitch. You'll just find your first post to work your first stitch there, and work 1 half double crochet into every stitch. At the end of round 4, you're going to have a total of 24 stitches. You'll find your second chain and join with the slip stitch there. To begin round 5, we're going to chain 2. In this round, we're going to increase again. We're changing the increments that we're increasing in. So we increased every other stitch back in round 3. This time we're going to increase every third stitch. So I'm counting my chain 2 as a stitch. I'm going to find my first post and make 2 half double crochets there. So that chain 2 is going to be the last stitch of the round again. Now you'll just make 1 half double crochet into each of the next 2 stitches. And 2 half double crochets in the next. And that's our repeat for this round. 1 half double crochet into each of the next 2, followed by 2 half double crochets in the next. So we counted our chain 2 as a stitch, and it is the last stitch of the round. Our second to last stitch is going to have 2 half double crochets. Then we'll work a half double crochet in that last stitch, and we'll join with a slip stitch to the second chain. At the end of round number 5, we'll have a total of 32 stitches. Round 6 and 7 is a repeat of round 4. So just to recap that, we're going to start both of these rounds with a chain 2, and we'll make 1 half double crochet into every stitch. When you get to the end of your round, you'll join with the slip stitch to the second chain here, and just go ahead and work up rounds 6 and 7. Once you finish up round 7, we've basically completed the toe of our stocking. We're moving on now to the foot. So we're going to sort of break this down into different sections. We have the toe, the foot, we'll move on to the heel, and then the upper part of the stocking. So with round number 8, we're going to begin our new stitch pattern. We're going to be working with double crochet stitches now. So we want to chain 3. And then we're going to make 1 double crochet in the same space that our chain 3 is coming from. So you can see that little gap, that hole there nicely. That's where we're going to work our double crochet. Then we'll skip 1 stitch and make 2 in the next. Now this one can get a little bit confusing because this first post always seems to get scrunched up and lost in our join. So this is the stitch that you're going to skip. Then you'll work 2 in the next. And that's our repeat. We'll skip the next stitch, work 2 double crochets in the next, and just repeat that until you get to the end of the round. When you've made it to the end of your round, you should be able to maintain your stitch pattern. So I have 2 double crochets here. I have the stitch that I'm going to skip, and then the stitch where this first little group is coming from. So you're going to insert your hook just in the space in between your chain 3 and your first post, and that's where we're going to join with the slip stitch to finish the round. Rounds 9 through 14 are all going to be worked the same, so let's have a look at that next. We're going to begin the round with a chain 3, and then we'll double crochet in the same space that our chain 3 is coming from. And so that's our first group. Then we're going to jump over until we see our next group of 2 double crochets. We're going to make 2 double crochets in the space. So I'm not working into the stitch, I'm just going in between the 2 posts, and that's where I'm working 2 double crochets. We'll find the next group of 2 and work 2 double crochets in the space between them. And that's our repeat for this round all the way through rounds 14. When you get to the end of your round, you'll join with the slip stitch in between this chain 3 and the post, just like we did in the previous round. So what I need for you to do at this point is finish crocheting rounds 9 through 14, just like we've reviewed here, and then we will move on to the next step. Once we finish that repeat from rounds 9 through 14, our stocking looks like this, and we're ready to move on to round 15. We're going to start the shaping for the heel. Round 15 begins with a chain 1 and make a single crochet in the same space in between those 2 stitches. And then we're going to skip over to the next group of double crochets, and we're going to make 2 double crochets there. And we just want to repeat that 7 times. So you'll make 2 double crochets in between the next 7 groups of 2 double crochets. Then once you've completed that, you'll jump over to your next group of 2 and make 1 single crochet in between that group of 2. Now we're going to start shaping for the heel now, and we want to do that by chaining 18. And you want to chain a little bit more loose than you normally would. And then once you have your 18 chains, you just want to make sure it's not twisted. and find the end of the round. And what we're going to do is locate our single crochet, the very first stitch of this round, and we're going to join with the slip stitch there. Now moving on to round 16, we're going to chain 3, and then we'll make 1 double crochet in the same space that our chain is coming from. So we're really just starting to work in our familiar stitch pattern now. Then we'll locate the next group of 2 and make 2 double crochets in between that space. And then we just want to repeat that 7 more times. So make 2 double crochets in between the next 7 groups. Once you finish that, now you've made it to your chain and your single crochet. We're going to make 2 double crochets in our single crochet stitch from that previous round. And now we need to continue our stitch pattern in the chain. What I recommend is working through 2 loops of the chain. So catching this top loop here and the back bump. So we're going to skip the first chain right here, and then we'll work 2 double crochets in the next. So again, I'm catching 2 of the loops. Just going to make your heel a little more secure and have fewer gaps as you're completing the heel portion. Then we're going to skip the next chain and work 2 double crochets in the next. And we're just going to repeat this for the chain. Skip a chain and then work 2 double crochets in the next. When you get to the end of your chain, you should end up making 2 double crochets in the last chain. So I'm skipping this one, working 2 in my last chain. And to finish off the round, we're just going to slip stitch in between our chain 3 and our first double crochet. So now we have the hole for our heel. We're going to come back to that later. What we need to do at this point now is start working on the upper part of our stocking, and then we'll come back and finish up the heel. Rounds 17 through 34 are all worked in the same way. We're going to chain 3 at the beginning of each one of the rounds. We'll make a double crochet in between the same space that our chain 3 is coming from. We'll skip over to the next group of 2 and work 2 double crochets there. Really, this isn't any different from the repeat on the foot. We just have a little bit of a different number that we're working on. So when you get to the end of your round, you're going to join with the slip stitch in between this space here. And what I need for you to do at this point is work up the top part of your heel. So rounds 17 through 34, just like we've covered here. When we come back, we have the band to talk about up at the top, and then of course we'll add in that heel. Once you've worked through round 34, our stocking is almost complete. We just have the band to work at the top, and then of course to add in the heel a little bit later. Now we're picking up with a band next, and we're starting round 35. This is another repeated section, so rounds 35 through 44 are going to be worked the exact same way, and this is how we're going to work them. We'll chain 2, which is going to count as a half double crochet, and we're just going to make 1 half double crochet into every single stitch. Now don't get confused because we do have these groups of 2. We're still working in the V of each one of those stitches. So the first one is going to be our first post here. We'll half double crochet there. And then we'll find the next 2 stitches. You can look at it from the top if that's a little easier for you. Just make 1 half double crochet into each stitch. Now we're going to work this repeat all the way around until we get to the end of the round, and once we do, we'll join with the slip stitch to our second chain. So at this point, go ahead and finish crocheting rounds 35 through 44, just as we've described here, and we'll meet back up at the end. We're going to fasten off the stocking and start working on that heel. Once you've finished crocheting rounds 35 through 44, then we've finished crocheting the body of our stocking. All we need to do at this point is fasten off, and you'll just leave yourself a tail that's long enough to weave in. Pull the tail through the loop on your hook. And we're moving on to the heel, which is the last part that we need to crochet. We want to lay our stocking out like this. So we have the heel opening here, the toe is facing upward, and I went ahead and marked this stitch, but I want to let you know exactly which stitch this is. From this direction here, we want to count over 11 chains. So we have our first chain here, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. We're going to place our stitch marker in the 12th chain over. That's where we're going to fasten on for our heel. I'm going to take a new piece of yarn, make a slip knot, and fasten on to that chain that we had marked, and we're going to chain 2. This chain 2 is going to count as a half double crochet, and what we want to do now is make 1 half double crochet into each of the next 11 chains. So we're going to have a chain that was skipped and a chain that has 2 double crochets in them. What I recommend doing is on the skipped chains, work your hook under 2 loops of the chain, half double crochet, and then work your half double crochet in the remaining loop when you have a group of 2 there. Now once you get to the corner, we're just going to shift things and start working half double crochets in each one of the stitches. So we have this stitch here. We're not going to do anything with that. We're going to find this first post here. So this is that group that's right on the edge. We're going to make a half double crochet into that stitch, and you want to make this one as tight as you possibly can because this is going to be sort of where the heel comes together, and we don't want a big gap there. Now from here, the rest of it's pretty simple. We're going to make just 1 half double crochet into every stitch. So I'm just really following the top of my row, looking at the V's and working my half double crochet into every stitch. We're going to do that all the way until we get to the other corner. When you make it to the other corner, just go ahead and count your stitches here. We should have a total of 15 before we move on to the chain again. So really all we're doing with this round is we're just setting a foundation and shaping for the heel. So the last thing that we want to do is make 1 half double crochet into each remaining chain. Then once you get to the end of your round, you'll just join with a slip stitch to your second chain. Moving on to round number 2 of the heel, we're going to start by chaining 2 and make 1 half double crochet into the first 8 stitches. As we're getting closer to the corner, we need to start shaping. So the next thing we need to do is make a half double crochet 2 together. So just wrap the yarn, insert your hook into the next stitch, pull up a loop, then yarn over, insert your hook into the next stitch, pull up another loop, then yarn over and pull through all the loops on your hook. So we've decreased by 1 with that stitch. Now we need to half double crochet in the next stitch and place a marker there. This is going to help us have a little visual cue for our decreases as we move forward. And then we're going to half double crochet 2 together again. Now make 1 half double crochet into each of the next 10 stitches. Then we're going to half double crochet 2 together. Half double crochet into the next stitch. And place another marker here. And half double crochet 2 together one last time. Then we just need to make 1 half double crochet into each of the last 5 stitches. For round number 3, we're going to chain 2 and then make 1 half double crochet until you get to 2 stitches from this marker. So we're going to leave these 2 stitches unworked, at least for now. When you have 2 stitches remaining before you get to the marker, we're going to half double crochet 2 together over those 2 stitches. So we're decreasing again. And then we can remove our marker just for a moment. We're going to half double crochet in that marked stitch and then replace your stitch marker and then half double crochet 2 together. Now we're going to do that again. We're going to make 1 half double crochet into each stitch until we have 2 stitches until the marker will decrease over those 2 again. Then half double crochet 2 together. Remove your stitch marker, half double crochet in that marked stitch, replace it, and then half double crochet 2 together. And make 1 half double crochet into each remaining stitch and join with a slip stitch to your second chain. Now rounds 4 and 5 of the heel are a repeat of round 3. So just what we covered, go ahead and work that for rounds 4 and round 5, and then we're ready to fasten off and start the assembly of our stocking. Once you've worked those last 2 rows, we're ready to fasten off. Leave yourself a tail that's about 8 to 10 inches long. We're going to use this to seam up the heel. Pull that tail through the loop on your hook. And you can go ahead and remove those stitch markers if you haven't done so already. Now go ahead and turn your stocking inside out. After you've turned your stocking inside out, we're going to do that so that we can seam up the heel and then weave in the rest of these ends that we have. So the first thing we'll do is thread our long tail, the one we just fastened off, on our darning needle, and then we're going to seam up the heel. Now what I like to do is catch one stitch from the front side and the same stitch that's right across from it on the other side and pull that through. And I'm just going to work a whip stitch. Honestly, you can use whatever stitching technique you want for this. It's not really that important. The end result is basically going to be the same. You're not going to see this seam because it's on the wrong side of the work. And then you can take what tail remains and just weave that in. Now you should just have a few more ends remaining. We have the one where we fastened on for the heel and we have one down at the bottom. So you'll just go ahead and weave those in. So I finished weaving in all of my ends and I flipped my stocking right side out now, and this is what the heel looks like once it's completed. Then for the band up at the top, we're just going to fold it down. And we're almost done. At this point, all we need to do is make a little holder up here. Now you can choose to make this out of yarn, or you can use ribbon if you feel like that's going to be a little more secure, have less stretch to it if this is going to have some weight in it. To make the strap out of yarn, just go ahead and create a slip knot, and we're just going to make a chain. So I found that 15 chains works best. You can use 15 chains if you want it longer or shorter, then you can adjust however you see fit. And once you have that, leave yourself a tail that's 3 or 4 inches long. We're going to use that to tie it off. And then just pull the tail through the loop on your hook, cinch that up. So we're going to stitch it along the back side, but we need to do it inside. So just go ahead and flip it out so you can see that. And then just catch one of your stitches with this first side. And then thread the other end. And go in through the same stitch but in the other direction. So that sort of loops it around. And then what we can do is just take these 2 ends and tie them in a knot. The last thing we need to do is make 2 pom-poms to attach underneath the fold here up at the top, just as a little accent. I'm using the 35mm and the 45mm pom-pom makers from Clover. If you're making these by hand or if you're using a different pom-pom maker, just pick 2 different sizes, and you want them to be relatively small. You can see how large these are. If they're too big, then they stick out too much from the stocking and they kind of look a little funny. So make 2 pom-poms, and then I'll show you how to secure them up to the band next. Once you have your 2 pom-poms, then we're going to secure them up underneath the band. And what I do is just secure them to our first row of half double crochet stitches. So I'm going to work with the larger one first. Just thread one end on your darning needle and just go behind that post. I mean, you could work through it if you want. Really, it's not too big of a deal. And then work this one back in the other direction. And you don't want to tie it all the way up. You do want it to hang a little bit. So just fold your band back down and then just pull it down to where you want it to be. And then you can tie it off. So for the next pom-pom, I'm going a couple stitches over. And that's a wrap.